This tutorial is to talk about the difference between original duration hours and budgeted hours when building a schedule. First, I want to show you a little bit about what I have developed here as a schedule. This is a very simplistic engineering schedule. If I come over here and look at the WBS, you can see I sort of put in an outline form. We have our milestones, scope development, our phase 1 or 30%, and under that, procurement calculations, and then even calculations broken it down a little bit more between mechanical and electrical. You could have civil, flow, etc. Our phase 2, 60%, phase 3, 100%. We're going to do our procedures, work orders. We have our implementation, WBS, and then closeout. So I kept it very, very simple. But I wanted to set up a WBS to just sort of show you that information. If I come back over here and look at activities, back to our activities tab, and come up to group and sort, I did put show group totals up here. And then I grouped by WBS level 1 and indented. You don't have to indent, that's a personal preference there, but I do have mine indented just to make it a little bit easier for me visually. And then sorted, I have it sorted between my start and finish in ascending order. So I just wanted to show you how I've set up this particular schedule. And the other thing I wanted to be able to explain to you is that I made a couple adjustments to the schedule, and I want to show you what they are. If we come over here to the general tab, I have the duration type for all the activities is going to be fixed duration and units. I have completed performing the estimate, so the budget set for this particular project, and by using the fixed duration and units, when I go to progress or actualize these activities and advance a data date, this duration type of fixed duration and units is going to help me when it comes to the labor units, and we'll see that as we get a little bit further along. The other thing I did was I changed the percent complete type to physical. And the reason why I did this is because if I want to look at earned value, I want to know where we really stand with the activity. Otherwise, let's say if this was a 2-week activity and 1 week is complete and the percent complete type was duration, it would say 50%. It would just do it based on assuming that you have progressed evenly over the course of that activity. So I changed it to physical, and I'll have to make updates based on what I get from individuals during our updates, okay? And so that's basically how I've set this project up. And just to give you a nice little visual though, if we go here and we look at our project and our Gantt, you can see I have the Gantt over here, and I just wanted to show you basically what it's going to look like if you're looking at the schedule, okay? So I think that's very typical of what most people see. The red over here is what's going to be our critical path. And so we have our schedule built. We've already set our estimate. And after we've done that, of course, it's very important that we go in here and we create a baseline, because we want our initial baseline to be set. That's how we're going to be able to determine our earned value. So I have baseline type of management sign-off baseline. I've already created it, okay? And then if I come over here, you can see if I assign, I have the project baseline, I have it assigned to that, and I also have it assigned to the primary. The user baseline is the primary one, and that's just based on whatever columns I might put in the past to just make sure I'm using the same baseline. There's times when I use different baselines if I want to get a bunch of, our current, what we had for original baseline, and then another baseline after a certain period of time. So this just gives me flexibility. So I just wanted to show you all of that before we really get into talking about what original duration and budgeted hours are. Okay, this is our very first activity in our schedule, scope development. If you notice, I stepped in here. I didn't start from the very beginning where we're going to send out and ask vendors to go ahead and bid on this project to do it, or awarding the contract. I'm starting right here at the scope documents. And if we notice over here, the first column is original duration. The next one is remaining duration. Okay, so original is 120 hours. So if I come over here, 120 hours, and if we base it on a 40-hour work week, that gives me 3 weeks. And you can tell this by our start is August 10th at 8 o'clock in the morning. The finish date is August 28th at 1700, which is 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay, so based on the calendar and the dates that we've selected, that's going to determine our original duration. So basically we have determined we're going to give ourselves 3 weeks to go ahead and get the scope document prepared, okay? Now we have two other columns here, BLU and ALU, and let me just go ahead and show you. If we come over here, I just abbreviated. BLU is going to be budgeted labor units, and then ALU will be our actual labor units. Okay, budgeted is what we determined when we built the schedule, and we sat down with people and we determined how many hours they're actually going to dedicate to a particular activity to complete that activity. And then actual will be, as we progress the schedule, we'll see that change. Then we have our start, finish, our baseline start, our baseline finish. The variance, if you notice, I pulled the variance based on the baseline project finish date. So I'm looking at finishes. Percent complete, I just made it say percent complete, but it's a physical percent complete. Our budgeted total cost and earned cost to date. Okay. Now for this particular activity, if you notice the start date and time, the time is at 0800, but look at the activity underneath. Okay, it's the same time, but look at our finish. It's August 28th at 1700, which is 5 o'clock in the afternoon, which is different than the one below. The other one says 1600. And the reason why it's different is if we come over here and we look at our general tab, my activity type is resource dependent. Now I made it resource dependent because if you look at my resources, okay, we have two specific individuals. We have Angie and we have Samuel. Okay, I've actually put a name to the two engineers who are going to be working on this particular activity, developing these scope documents. Okay, and the reason why I made this activity resource dependent is because I want to use the resource calendar. So activity type of resource dependent means we are using the resource calendar. So if I come over here to my resources and I look at Angie or I look at Samuel and we look at our details tab, you can notice their calendar says 5 times 8. So it's a 40-hour work week, just like our other activity calendars are. However, the start and the finish time, in this case, the finish time is different, okay? And the reason why I want to use their resource calendar is because if they have time that has been dedicated to vacation, I want that to be shown and it will tell me that they're not available during that time, okay? So for this particular activity, I have made it resource dependent. If we look at submittal down below, the next activity, it's task dependent. So if it's task dependent, we're using the task or the activity calendar. If it is resource dependent, then I'm using the calendar that is tied to the resources that I have assigned to this particular activity. Okay, so we have our duration hours. In this case, it's 120 hours, 3 weeks, 3 40-hour weeks. However, if we look at our budgeted time, Angie up here is budgeted for 60 hours. And Samuel is budgeted for 80 hours. So these fields I can type right in here, right? I can change the budgeted hours. So I don't need to keep that at 60 and 80. It's whatever when we sat down and spoke with them. So in the case for Angie, the 60 hours, Primavera is going to sit there and they're going to say, okay, 60 hours is 1/2 of 120 hours. So it's basically going to dedicate or budget 4 hours per day for Angie. And for Samuel, it's going to take that 80 hours and it's going to spread it evenly over the course of the 3 weeks. Now you might say, okay, but that's making the assumption that they're working the same amount of hours each day. That's true. So if we come over here to our resource assignments, and in this case, just to let you know, you have the ability to go ahead and do a group and sort. And I did a group and sort and I put it by activity name and then resource ID. It just made it a little bit easier for me to be able to see. This is basically a spreadsheet, okay? So I have the activity here and I have Angie and I have Samuel. And look at Angie. You see how the field here, how it's white, it's not grayed out? That means I can go in here and I can manually, if you go in there, you see it's editable. So I can change the hours in here. But you notice with her, it just defaulted to 4 every day. And it's going to be like that over the course of the 3 weeks. So it's basically a spreadsheet, and you can do this with each individual. Every single one of these activities, I can go in. If Angie told me I'm going to work 6 hours this day, 2 hours the next, 3 hours, you can go in and you can adjust these hours, and it's going to feed in and adjust the budgeted hours when we go look at the activity tab. okay? And then you can see for Samuel, it put 4 hours per day, but then it bumped him up to 6 and then 6. So Primavera did that on its own. There's nothing preventing you from going in here and, like I said, use this resource assignment spreadsheet and then manually change or adjust these times, okay? So if you are someone who's going to have to follow this project and pay particular attention day by day, then this may be very important. If you're going to be looking at it by week or by month, this isn't going to be as significant, but then you can change your time scale and you can put it on a week or how many hours per week they're going to do it, okay? But I wanted to show you that you do have the ability to go into your resource assignments and adjust the budgeted hours. So now let's go back to our activities. And like we said, we have here our 2 engineers, and they have been budgeted 60 hours for Angie and 80 hours for Samuel. Okay. Now we're going to go and do our example. We're going to go ahead and progress our schedule. So we're going to go ahead. Let's start. This is our first activity. So we're going to start the activity at 8 o'clock. I'm going to come up here, Tools, Schedule. I'm going to take this from the 10th to the 11th, and if you notice, it's just set at midnight. So I'm going to select this and schedule. Okay, so our activity has started, and if you look over here to duration, original says 120, actual says 8. See, and we have this up here, we have 120. Now notice remaining though stayed at 120. That's because if you look over here, look, it went to August 31 at 1700. So I need to come over here and needed to bring this back up to the 28th because it pushed it. Now it's adjusted our remaining duration and kept our at complete at 120 hours. I could have just gone right in here, our remaining block, and changed it to 112, but I moved it back up, the finish that it's going to happen on that Friday at 1700, which is 5 o'clock. Okay. So we started the activity, we've adjusted to make sure our duration is looking correct. So notice up here it says 120 here, 112. Budgeted labor units says 140. Look over here though, actual labor units went to 8. Over here, actual labor units went to 8. Because if I come up here to resource assignments, if you recall, they were both budgeted for 4 hours a day, so it has 4 and 4, and then actual says 4. Okay, so let's come back to our activities. And by keeping remember we talked our duration type, fixed duration in units. By using this, come back over and look at our labor units. See, budgeted was 140, actual was 8. By having that duration type, it's going to adjust the remaining down to 132 to keep our at complete at 140. So it's going to hold our at complete labor units at 140 because we have set our budget, and that's the purpose of the duration type, is to keep us on track. It's assuming that we're going to keep on track. Now, if I go to the resource tab, for each resource, you can see Angie, actual units 4, Samuel, actual units 4, and notice in here, I can go in and adjust. So if they tell me that they had something different than 4, I'm going to go in under this column and I'm going to adjust the actual units. And it automatically calculated that the remaining is going to be 56, right? She started out with 60 hours, used 4. It's automatically calculating that she has 56 left. Samuel, okay, he was budgeted for 80 hours. He used 4, so it's saying remaining units is 76. And this remaining units is also editable. So if I receive information that actual units and remaining units are different, I can adjust them under the resource tab for the particular resource. And when you go back to the status tab here, it will automatically update and change the actual and remaining and at complete. Okay, so if we aren't running on track with the schedule, then that's where we're going to adjust it, is under with the particular resource, and then it will update our status tab. Okay, and then the last thing we'd want to do is we'd want to adjust our physical percent complete. So if they told me on the first day they got a lot done and they're up 10%, I'm going to change physical percent complete to 10%. Now, for this next advance in the data date, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to take my expected finish and I'm going to set it. okay? This activity is in progress, and with the expected finish, it's going to assist us. So when I advance the data date, I come up here, Tools, Schedule. Now, when we're here, if we go to the Options button here, and you notice under the General tab, it says Use Expected Finish Dates. If this is selected, it will allow you to use that expected finish date. And when I advance the data date, let's go to the 12th and schedule. See, we advanced the data date, but look over here. Remember the last time I advanced the data date, we had to go in and adjust either our finish date, or we had to go into this remaining duration over here and adjust our hours. But since I used the expected finish, it holds my finish date where I want it to be, okay? Our actual hours now is 16, right? We've had 2 work days, so 8-hour work days, 16 total. So we started out with 120 hours for 3 weeks. We've used 16 hours. Our remaining is 104, calculated on its own because I used the expected finish, and that completed will be 120 hours, okay? So expected finish is a nice feature to use, particularly if you have a lot of projects or a lot of activities that you're trying to manage. And if they tell you it's going to be a different date, move it in 2 days, it's going to finish early, then I would change my expected finish and I would move it in 2 days. I can always adjust it. I can change it here, I can change it to whatever, but it's just, like I said, it's just a great tool for when you're advancing the data date to hold your finish and to adjust your duration hours. So if we come up here, we had 120 and remaining is 104. Budget labor units, right, staying at 140 because that's what we had budgeted. But if you notice, it says actual now is 16. So actual over here is 16. It's automatically adjusted the remaining to 124 to keep our at complete at 140, right? Because 16 and 124 is going to be 140 hours. So we come over to our resource tab and we look at Angie and Samuel, and now their actual units is 7 and 9, okay? And remaining units. So it's holding it. 60 minus 7 is going to be 53. 80 minus 9 is going to be 71. And as I mentioned before, you can go in and adjust the actual units, and you can adjust the remaining units. So what that's going to do is our budgeted is going to stay the same, right? Because that's for earned value, but our actual costs, our actual values will change, and that will affect our earned value, which is very important. Same with if we come over here and I change my expected finish, or the finish date either goes out or goes in, that's going to affect our earned value. And so we've advanced our data date 2 days. I come up to resource assignment, notice 4 hours, 4 hours, 4, 4, okay? So we're tracking, everything's good. Now let's go ahead and advance our data date one more time. Let's go to the 13th, schedule. And there we go. So original duration was 120. We've had 3 work days, so it's 24 hours. Remaining is 96, and at complete will be 120. Our expected finish did hold it at 1700 on the 28th. Okay. Oh, maybe now we're up to about 13% complete, so I put that in there. Our budgeted was 140. Our actual is 24. Remaining is 116, and at complete. And again, you can go to the resource tab and you can adjust accordingly, and it will do that. Now you're going to say, look, those hours aren't the same, and I had to estimate the same under resource assignments. Well, I'm not looking at minutes, and Primavera will go ahead and adjust with the minutes just to evenly distribute the time. So that's why you're not seeing that be exactly dead on, okay? So now we've progressed our schedule, and if you notice, if we come over here and at the WBS level for scope development, we have our budgeted total costs, and notice our earned cost to date, which is our actual cost, has been going up, okay? And if we come all the way up on the project level, then we'll be able to see we had our budgeted, and it rolls all the way up to the top, okay? So I'm hoping that out of this tutorial, it helps explain a little bit about how the duration hours work over here to the left, how the labor units work over here, why it's important that if there's a difference between our duration and our budgeted hours, how that's going to affect if you're going to do earned costs or if you are tracking the budget. It's extremely, extremely important. If we had a 1-to-1 ratio, you can see that our budget would be very, very high for what the actual cost would be. Okay, so if we were to sort of summarize, when we're performing an estimate and to track earned value to differentiate, we need to differentiate between our budgeted and duration hours, again, because the financials draw from your budgeted hours and actual costs, the actual units, which translate into costs. So that's also why it's very important that we have our baseline set, because it's going to pull, it's comparing our actual schedule here, our current situation, to what we had projected. Okay, so, and that's in another tutorial talking about earned value. And the other thing to remember is when you are performing updates, okay, you want to make sure you pay attention to your remaining duration, that it is correct. You want to make sure that you adjust your physical percent complete. Or if you leave it at duration, that's up, it's a preference, but you want to make sure that if you have physical percent complete, that you do the update there. That you pay attention to your actual labor units, remaining labor units, that you go in and look at your resources, and if you have to adjust them, that you go here to actual units or to remaining units and go in and edit. And then you'll be able to track your schedule. But the important thing is understanding that your original duration and your budgeted labor units are not the same thing. So this concludes our session on the difference between budgeted and duration hours. We appreciate your comments below, and do not hesitate to contact us at Contract Scheduler. Our email is info@contractscheduler.com if you have any questions, feedback, or suggestions for future topics. Thank you.